We're going to break away from this program and take you live now to Lafayette Park, where one of the organizers of the Unite the Right rally is about to start speaking.
I organized last year's Unite the Right rally, and I organized this year's rally. And I'm going to tell you why I did that. But first, I would like to make a few things clear. I'm not doing this to disrespect the memory of people who were hurt or who died last year. My condolences are with the family of Heather Heyer and with the families of the 2 Virginia State troopers who died in the helicopter accident. I thank them for their service. Second, I would like to thank the law enforcement community of the Washington, D.C. area for protecting my free speech rights and, by proxy, the free speech rights of all Americans. This has been a very weird and imperfect process, and I think hopefully we'll do more demonstrations in the DC area in the future and learn how to work together better. But the main thing is, so far, I'm not aware of anybody being hurt. Everybody's safe. That was my #1 priority. My second priority was to uphold free speech, because I think a very dangerous precedent was set last year for a number of different reasons. I did not want to allow the tactics of Antifa using violence to shut down the speech of people they disagree with to work. And that's one of the reasons we don't have more people. There were a lot of people who were at last year's rally who are very scared this year. They felt like last year they came to express their point of view. They were attacked, and when they fought back, they were overly prosecuted. And the Charlottesville government refused to prosecute the Antifa side of the violence. So the way that this is going to work is I'm going to speak first a little bit. I'm going to answer some common questions that the media and the folks at home might have. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the civil rights abuse that happened last year in Charlottesville and the facts that were kept from the American public. Then some other folks are going to come up and they're going to speak. They're going to speak on the topic of white civil rights and the fact that white people should be allowed to have advocates and to advocate for their civil rights just like other racial groups are able to do already in this country. Some folks are not even white. They're going to come up and speak about the benefits of tolerance and talking to one another rather than attacking each other. They're going to talk about a lot of different things. Not all my speakers were able to make it here today, unfortunately. Let me just tell you guys a little bit about the day I've had, which was kind of crazy. First of all, I had people attacking me left, right, and center. And we had a guy who was going to be driving a bus for us, and we didn't know who that guy was, evidently, because we showed up and he wasn't there. There were a lot of sketchy characters there. So we ended up getting to the train station a little bit early. And we weren't told by law enforcement previously that as soon as I arrived, we had to go. So I apologize if people got left behind. We were supposed to have the train station open from 2 to 3. And a lot of people may have traveled from all over the country and got left behind there. Okay. So I'm going to give 2 speeches. The first one is about the civil rights abuse that happened last year in Charlottesville. I'm going to let the other guys speak, maybe even some people who weren't even thinking about speaking. But we've had to fill in some gaps. Some of our speakers had their tires slashed on the way in and got waylaid. You know, we had people who were going to speak. We had a guy from South Africa who was going to speak about the rape and mutilation and murder of the white farmers in South Africa. And all these friends in the alt-right told this guy not to come. A lot of these people who are tough guys, wannabe Nazi types said, don't go, it's going to be a shooting gallery. You're going to be hurt if you go. Well, All right, tough guy Nazis. I'm not a Nazi, I'm a moderate, and I'm standing here while you're in your mommy's basement. All right, so what happened last year in Charlottesville was that I organized a Unite the Right event. The purpose of the Unite the Right event was to say that white people deserve to be able to stand up for their rights like other people are able to do. I think the tearing down of that Robert E. Lee statue was symbolic of a replacement that is going on in the United States, where white people are being guilted for slavery and war and all these things that every racial group on the planet has engaged in, but they're saying tear down Robert E. Lee and tear down Thomas Jefferson. They're not saying tear down the Great Wall of China, which was built with slave labor. They're not saying tear down the Mayan and Aztecan pyramids, which were built with slave labor. It's only white people, and it's only our countries which have to be flooded with too many people to the point where the host populations don't exist anymore. I'm not a white nationalist. I've never claimed to be a white nationalist, okay? But I'm okay with sharing this country with people from around the world. But if you bring in too many people at once, it's not the same country anymore. And that's what they're doing, and that's why a lot of white people feel aggrieved, because they feel like the country that they're waking up in 2018 is a very, very different country than the one they woke up in 1960, 1970, 1980. And so I think, therefore, the face of white advocacy is very different than it was in the past. A lot of folks are deliberately misconstruing white identity politics today as something that's endorsing the KKK or neo-Nazis. And I think, in fact, there are a lot of people in the alt-right who are encouraging that by trying to be these cartoon Nazis and deliberately stupid and hateful. And I just got to say, I mean, I thank the alt-right to some extent for waking me up to the fact that my people had a voice and had people who were going to stand up for them. But I got to say, a lot of the jokes just aren't funny anymore. Give it a rest. We got to be honest. We got to be sincere. There is a way forward to help white folks, but we cannot be associating with hate or violence or oppression. Now, with Charlottesville last year, I tried to do a demonstration for that Robert E. Lee statue. I invited a lot of people from across the alt-right, alt-light, Trump supporters, American heritage supporters. A lot of folks were scared to come and be associated with some of the more extreme speakers like Richard Spencer. All right, so it ended up becoming a more extreme event than I had intended. But nevertheless, even if some people have ideas which were offensive at that rally, the vast, vast majority of people on my side were nonviolent. And I think even the other side, even though they came prepared to use violence to shut down the first Unite the Right rally, they would have been nonviolent too if law enforcement had done what it was supposed to do. What we were dealing with was a city where the vice mayor, who was trying to tear down that Robert E. Lee statue, was pretending to be doing it in the interest of equality or tolerance, but at the same time, his tweets were saying, I hate white people. I hate seeing them around town. My favorite thing about being down south is seeing the faces on little white men when they have to look up to a black man. I mean, this was a racist, anti-white bigot, and that's why he was going after our heritage. And I think a lot of people who hate white people are hiding behind this false credo of equality when they're not really for equality. They are for supremacy. They are Marxist. And right now they see the white man as being on top. But not all white people are on top. Look, I'm a white man. I'm not rich. I'm not privileged. I've had a hard time just like other people have had. I have an army of people trying to stop me from being able to speak. There was an independent review done of the Charlottesville government's conduct last year by former federal prosecutor Tim Heaphy. Tim Heaphy said that the cause for the violence was the Charlottesville government. As the first fights broke out last year, the police chief, Al Thomas, said, let them fight. It will make it easier to declare unlawful assembly. That's why I wanted to speak to President Trump at the White House. I think that it was criminal misconduct by the Charlottesville government. They shut down that event by allowing violence. They promised 8 squadrons of police officers to keep the peace. They didn't show up. They promised 200 cops in the back of the park. They didn't show up. They promised cops at the front of the park. They didn't show up. And in fact, when the violence started, they were allowing people to riot in the streets, point rifles at people in cars, attack cars, and I think that that's part of why people lost their lives last year. All right, so I'm going to give another person an opportunity to speak right now. Who would like to speak next? You want to? Not ready, George? So one of our speakers, hey, any of the other people who are scheduled to speak, you want to come up and get your opportunity? Charles, you want to come up here?
Who attacked DeAndre Harris represent your rally? Were those people there for it?
DeAndre Harris was a miscarriage of justice. DeAndre Harris attacked an innocent man, and that is clear. DeAndre Harris was with a group of people who, look, these were black guys who were taken advantage of by racist liberals. Because these Antifa, what they did was they came equipped with weapons like mag lights and portable flamethrowers. And they gave it to these black guys so that they would attack people. That's what DeAndre Harris and Corey Long said when they were in court. DeAndre Harris and Corey Long were attacking people with Confederate flags. They were stealing them and lighting them on fire with portable flamethrowers. DeAndre Harris took a mag light, and while DeAndre Harris's friend grabbed a Confederate flag out of his hand, DeAndre Harris whacked an innocent protester across the face with the mag light. I'm not saying that the violence done to DeAndre was proportional, but it was clear that DeAndre started that violence, and that parking garage incident would not have happened were he not a violent individual himself. And further, it shows the civil rights abuse that's happened in Charlottesville because what's called the 14th Amendment, and the reason that they implemented the 14th Amendment was because at the time, after Reconstruction, they said that a black man should not be hung for something that a white man would not be hung for. In Charlottesville, it's the opposite. A white man will be hung for something a black man would not be hung for. DeAndre Harris's buddy fired a flamethrower at my crowd of people. And
attacked the man in a parking garage.
Corey Long, DeAndre Harris's friend, fired a flamethrower at a crowd of people. If I had done that, I would be in a penitentiary for the rest of my life. But he got disorderly conduct. He got a little slap on the wrist. And DeAndre Harris said, get that flag. And when Corey Long grabbed the flag out of the peaceful protesters' hands, DeAndre hit him across the head. I don't condone the violence that was done to DeAndre Harris, but I think he had a GoFundMe and he did very well off of that. He got himself some new sneakers and a rap video, so good for him. He got something out of it. He attacked one of my guys, so it's a little hard for me to have sympathy for him. But look, I don't condone political violence. I disavow political violence, and I'm sorry that Mr. Harris got hurt. I'm sorry that Mr. Harris's victim got hurt. So I'm going to let my next speaker up. Charles Edward Lincoln is a civil rights activist from New Orleans, where they've also been tearing down Confederate history. They've been tearing down Confederate statues. And instead of backing down and allowing history to be tarnished and smeared, Mr. Lincoln is one of the few people like myself who's fighting back. He's filing lawsuits against the city of New Orleans and the opportunistic Mayor Mitch Landrieu. So I'll allow him to talk about that. Mr. Charles Lincoln.
Jason, thank you so much for having me. I have a rather complex background and a rather complex agenda here. I don't even know exactly where to start. I'm not used to speaking on a microphone, I'm sorry. But I guess first I need to apologize to every one of my former colleagues at Harvard and the University of Chicago and Tulane University who are undoubtedly very embarrassed to see me up here on this stage. I have been well educated enough to know that the vast majority of the power elite in this country is totally corrupt. And this is part of my agenda here today, is to talk about that total corruption that comes from the power elite based in the Ivy League, based at major universities throughout this country, that is trying to destroy everything that was ever good about the United States of America. One of the things that was best about the United States of America was, in fact, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. There's no doubt about that. Our freedom was precious. Our freedom is no longer really at issue at all. We live in the most, one of the most repressive, I mean, there's still North Korea, there's still Saudi Arabia, but we live in one of the most repressive and controlled anti-freedom countries in the entire world today. And it's worth comparing, it's worth thinking about the comparison. Which country was freer, the United States in 1860 or the United States today? That may seem a strange question to you, and especially the mob of people who's been beaten into a media frenzy by this whole concept that we're all Nazis out here. I mean, I deplore that concept. I ridicule it. I think it's a show. I think that this whole thing is bizarre beyond belief. But let's think for a minute about real freedom. Even counting the existence of chattel slavery, which country was freer? United States in 1860 or the United States today? Today we imprison a larger population than existed in the United States when the Constitution was adopted. We imprison more people per capita than any other country in the world, by far. It is mostly minorities, and that's an interesting point because in essence, we are not anywhere close to being as free for any race today as we were in 1860. And how has that happened? It's happened through a very slow but very progressive implementation of the Communist Manifesto. We effectively live in Karl Marx's dream country today. It is so regulated. It is every aspect of it. I mean, just the fact that we've got 20,000 policemen or however many policemen we've got out here today is, to my mind, it's a scandal. It's exactly what Benjamin Franklin was warning us when he said, any people who will trade a little security for all their freedom never deserved to be free. I may be quoting that a little bit wrong, but the point is, this whole situation is we have traded our freedom for our security. Now, how did the transformation take place? The transformation took place right where Jason Kessler was talking about. The transformation took place with immediate post-war amendments to the Constitution in 1865, 1866, and 1868. That was the beginning of the trade-off. That was the beginning of the trade-off of security, and not just physical security, but economic security for liberty. And the implementation of the 14th Amendment through the courts and through the Congress is what has led us to where we are. One interesting thing about the 14th Amendment, Jason didn't quite represent exactly what the 14th Amendment did. It wasn't just supposed to be it is not articulated as a race-based amendment to the Constitution. Neither is the prohibition on slavery, except as punishment for a crime. Does anybody doubt that the 13th Amendment is what really gave rise to the prison industry in the United States? I doubt that it is the 14th Amendment that has created a situation where the courts can use the concepts of race to divide people against each other. In New Orleans, what we've seen is we have seen the former mayor, Mitch Landrieu, and now the current mayor, LaToya Cantrell. We have seen them use the issue of the monuments to create a kind of racial tension that never in my entire life existed in New Orleans. New Orleans was always one of the most peaceful, friendly, multicultural, multiracial cities in the United States that was never a land of hatred. And the black people and the white people of New Orleans cherished our history and enjoyed it tremendously. Now they have set up a situation where they denigrate the past, and yet they set it up as basically another communistic welfare program where we're advocating you will be better off if we destroy all these monuments. You will be better off if we forget history. You will be better off if we don't really understand the Constitution or what was at stake in 1860 to 1865. This is what we need to talk about, the real constitutional issues and the real tensions that existed. Now, let me just say that the real struggle of inequality right now is not black versus white. It's not Christian versus non-Christian. The real struggle for inequality right now is lawyers versus non-lawyers. And I say this with some authority. I am a disbarred lawyer. You'd find it out immediately if you Googled me, so I'm telling you right now. I'm a disbarred lawyer because I have been fighting for civil rights for people who aren't supposed to have any, namely white people. Who ever told me that? Judges have told me that. FBI agents have told me that. The civil rights laws, as they are implemented, are designed to be black against white only, never white against the police. And this is part of the problem that we have, is that where the law is written, where the civil rights laws were implemented and written, they were written specifically to set black against white. And that is a disaster. It is a disaster. It is a betrayal of the American Constitution. It is a betrayal of the original 10 amendments to the Constitution. And the people who do most of this betrayal are, in fact, the lawyers and the judges in this country. And so I have 3 programs that I want to introduce to you and I advocate today, and then I'll step down. Those 3 programs are: we must abolish judicial immunity, because right now judges can get by with violating your rights and your rights and your rights, everyone's rights, and there's nothing you can do about it. In essence, what we need to do is we need to restore power to the people by having decisions made not by single judges, but by juries. It was the original concept in this country. It is an ancient concept of the Indo-European people. The concept of judges basically comes out of the Bible. It is a concept, Moses appointed 1 judge for every one of the 12 tribes of Israel, and it was a Middle Eastern model. We need to go to the European model of community decisions implemented by juries. 12-person juries are probably not even adequate. Maybe we need to go to a larger system of juries. The old New England townhouse town council had judicial functions. The Viking Althing had judicial functions. Until very recently, England preserved part of this by the final court of appeal in England used to be the House of Lords, a group of elite decision makers. Thomas Jefferson originally believed that the constitutionality of any issue should be decided by the Senate. We need to go back to those issues. So point number one, abolish judicial immunity, because once you abolish judicial immunity and restore power to juries and the people, once you do that, the entire profession of law will become very different. It will become a class of specialists instead of a class of parasites. And right now, it's the lawyers who are controlling and perverting everything for their profit. And I say this as a proud former lawyer. Now, the second issue I want to point out is what Jason mentioned about how everybody in the right, from Trump on right, and I consider Trump a very moderate president. I don't consider him radical at all. I do consider him the best president since Ronald Reagan. I don't see how a conservative could think otherwise. But he's not a radical conservative by any stretch of the imagination. Now, but he's attacked. There are people in the press here giving me dirty looks because I'm saying he's not a radical conservative. It's hilarious. In any event, the point is that they want to not so much silence us as make sure that no one listens. That is the big thing. The internet is the public forum of today. This park is a very bad place to try to share ideas. The internet is the place. So when Amazon, Google, YouTube are taking people down because of their participation with Jason or even smaller groups, I mean, Aviale Horton, who should have been here, Sean Donahue, and then, of course, everyone's shocked because a big name comes down, Alex Jones. So we need to understand that these people, Google, Amazon, etc., they are acting as agents of the government. And when they act as agents of the government, they are violating our civil rights. They are violating our constitutional rights. We need to have these issues addressed in the courts. But what court will do it? In my most recent case that is pending in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Louisiana, the judge has already issued an order show. All right, I'm told to shut up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Al Stankard. Yeah.
I'm gonna introduce Al in just a second, but I just want to bring up something here because, look, this is a pretty moderate demonstration. I've been in D.C. for a week, and they've been talking like we were about to bomb Pearl Harbor. And they've said a lot of things about President Trump that haven't been true either. So let me ask you something. Is this racism epidemic a real thing, or are people making it up to manipulate the American public? Who is the intolerant one? Is it us who are here expressing our First Amendment rights, or are these folks who showed up by the thousands to stop us from being able to speak, and they're completely indoctrinated? We were walking down the street, and some of my non-white supporters are being attacked by these white liberals saying, why are you with these guys? You're a traitor. Like they own them. You do not own me. You do not own them. And the media needs to get real about how they report on race. Stop making this phony narrative up about this racism epidemic when it's not there. You're making it up to fund the SPLC and the ADL so they can clamp down on the speech of American citizens. Next, I'm going to bring up my friend Al Stankard, who has done a lot of good volunteer work for me to help make this event possible. He's been a loyal supporter at a time when loyal supporters were hard to come by, when people were turning on me left and right, and very few people seem to want to stand up for rights. So I'm going to let Al speak before it rains. Al Stankard.
Hello, everybody. My name is Al Stankard. I used to go by the moniker Harlan Venison online. It's funny, I could say so many things about what I think are wrong with the world, but it's occurred to me that people, their brains are very limited and finite, and you have to unlock their hearts a little bit first before you can get them to see the world as you perhaps see it. I was a very bitter young man. I think if I were 14 right now, I'd be far-fetched. I felt sort of suffocated under the crush of anti-white scapegoating and rhetoric when I was younger. But then, as I got older, I felt so bleak about it, and I realized that we need some sort of non-violent means of bringing humanity together and ending the identity politics, which, call me crazy, but I think it is driving socioeconomic inequality in the US. It's a smokescreen for the abuses and excesses of global capitalism, which I'm not opposed to fundamentally. I think globalism is inevitable, and I think capitalism could use a little bit of tweaking, but it is not so far from human nature. And so for me, I see an opportunity to stave off great catastrophe. I feel like our society is in a doom loop. These people over here, many of them are blindly hating us, and a small minority would gladly put a bullet in my head or Jason's head if they could. During inauguration, I was there. I was walking among the protesters, and I remember Richard Spencer randomly showed up, and I was there by sheer coincidence. And when the guy came and punched Spencer, I pulled him off, and I pursued him on foot peacefully to try to challenge his ideas. I didn't punch him though. And I got death threats galore after that. Antifa literally went after my family. They called my sister at her work while I was on a plane to Ecuador, and they said I was in a coma in a hospital in DC. And they were insisting that she go there immediately. I can only assume to abduct her to get to me. My point here is that I see how severe things are and how blinded people are. And if they want to fix racism, they have to think a little bit about what racism is in 2018 in order to solve the problem. Like if you're stuck in a riptide getting pulled out to sea, you can't flail your arms maniacally. You have to pause and appreciate the situation and relax and think about what's going on. If you want to solve a physics problem, you don't start doing math immediately. You think about what problem you're modeling. And in my mind, the excesses of the scapegoating of whites, to repeat, is intended to draw attention away from the real problem. And it disheartens me to see that even while there's still some people who believe in a world without identity politics, like Bernie Sanders, even he is being pulled through the muck. And it's driving society apart. After inauguration, I was worried of civil war. I forgot about it for a year. But then at this time last year, I was in Hungary. I just got back from India. And it occurred to me, this is a very, very serious age we live in. And it sounds crazy, but I'm all for white equal rights. But I want a world that fits together in one piece for more than just a few more years. And these people have to pause and think about what we're ultimately trying to change. Even if some of our hearts are filled with hatred, maybe it's because we haven't learned how to express ourselves the correct way, in a way that maybe they can understand. I'm not a nationalist, I'm not even alt-right, to be honest. I believe that the scapegoating of whites is inaccurate on several levels. Baffled stares. Okay. Who's next? Jovi? Okay.
All right.
Yeah, hello. Say what?
I can say your name.
No,
You got
I
it?
don't want thunderous applause. I'll just introduce myself
Okay.
as Sam Hyde.
Yeah!
Yeah. I have something to say. First of all, thanks to my friends in the New Jersey European Heritage Association for giving me such a great time here on the East Coast during my visit. I also want to thank the DC Police for the free VIP escort through the Capitol. This is my first time here. And I want to thank Antifa for giving us such a warm welcome. I hope they got something out of their system today. I'm thankful to live in a country where a man can take a walk in the park and talk about controversial ideas. And the only thing that he needs is a legion of 10,000 highly armed guards. So I want to say to Donald Trump, since I'm here in front of the White House, that I appreciate the job you're doing, making America great again. And I have just a few suggestions. First of all, if you want to ensure the integrity of our society, it's probably a good idea to put our women in the workforce to try and lower the female unemployment rate to the lowest rate in history. That's going to help us increase our birth rate and stop the native population from being displaced. That's really a priority right now, I think, so that we then will be able to justify bringing in a continuous wave of immigration, as Joe Biden put it, continuously replacing the native population. I think it's a great idea to bring in people who are out there in that crowd right now, that as soon as they get to this country, they immediately start attacking its core values and beliefs, and therefore underwriting our sense of ourselves as Americans. That's something you really want for a stable country going forward. A group of people who have no sense of cohesion. Also, I think another really important thing that you should take a look at is the people in South Africa. They're the first iteration of this social experiment that we're undergoing right now. If you want to help some people out, I know a few of them, in fact, that could use some compassionate immigration reform, so to speak. Also, if you would address the rape of 40,000 white women every year, the interracial rape by black men of 40,000 white women every year, that would go a long way in endearing you to us as our great white hope. See, I'm not a capitalist because I can't see the logic in what this system is doing to my people. And I'm obviously not a communist because of the people out there and what they're doing to my people. And Jason Kessler brought us here together to talk about love. And I do have great love for my people. Some say that I have hate for other people because they think that gives them an excuse to persecute my people by claiming that we're hateful for protecting our heritage and protecting the memory of our veterans that they're trying to erase. That's another thing that's really important. If you want people to fight for your country and protect it, what you should do is dishonor the previous generations of men that were drafted and had to fight and die for this country. You should dishonor those veterans so that then those of us who fight for the country in our generation can look forward to the disrespect and the displacement of our people in the future. That's going to create a really strong national character, I think. So if you could look into those few things for us, dear Mr. President, I think that that would help us out a lot. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the resources and effort that were spent here today to give us this opportunity to talk about important things. And with that, I bid you all good night.
They ask you when you say your people, what do you mean?
How's everybody doing? Great? Media? Everybody? Look, I came out here to stand up for free speech. I will always stand for free speech. Not only will I stand for it, but I will fight for it. I don't care what race or religion you are, you have every right to speak in this country. But Jason made a valid point. There is a problem going on right now in America when people like him are being attacked when he wants to peacefully assemble in this country. Why? People are afraid of a country being predominantly white. I am here today, but I said to myself, if every speaker on this stage was white, why should that bother me? Why should it bother you? I don't need to tell you what race I am. I don't need to tell you what gender I am. There's only two, of course. I don't need to tell you what religion I am. I'll tell you one thing, though. I am an American. Are you an American? Do you love this country? If you love this country, then you, sir, you, ma'am, are a nationalist. And if you're white and you love this country, you're a white nationalist. There's a big difference between white supremacy and white nationalism, okay? You have to stop using that word to describe someone who you believe is a Nazi. And the reason why I say that is because there are Trump supporters out there. There are people on the right that are politically correct. And that's the problem. If someone's a white nationalist, what's the problem? They want to preserve their culture. White supremacists want their culture to be dominant. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree or disagree. It's not fair that my family can go back to the island and wave their flag and say that they're from this country and they're proud. But if somebody from here says they're proud to be an American and they're white, you label them a Nazi. That is BS. And I do not stand around with a sign that says blacks for Trump, Latinos for Trump, Jews for Trump, Christians for Trump. I don't stand with that because if a white man can hold a sign that says whites for Trump, why should I hold a sign that says Latinos for Trump? And guess what? This is probably the most diverse crowd, if that's the way you want to put it, than that crowd out there. I've been yelled at by so many white liberals. They're not even liberals. I don't know where they're at right now. They're on the left. But I'm going to tell you this right now, okay? I don't care what race you are. You have every right to get on this stage and speak your piece. If you are hosting free speech rallies, and this goes to the Trump supporters, there should be no reason why you excommunicate people because you don't agree with their message. I do free speech rallies, but I do open mic rallies. You are allowed to get on the stage and speak your piece anytime. We do this in New York City, okay? We make it happen. And I don't care what weather it is. I've spoken in thunder and rain and mud. I treaded through it, but no matter how much mud I tread through, they will not tread on me, and they will not tread on you. Wake up, America. We are standing right next to the White House. This man is our president, and he's going to be our president until 2024 because of people like that. Donald Trump is your president, but that does not mean Make America Great Again dies when Donald Trump is not your president. We will keep it carrying on. I'm from New York City. We have MAGA NYC, and we're going to keep doing this. I don't care how many people told me not to come. I came today for a reason. I traveled all the way from Vegas just to come here and speak to you guys, okay? And I'm going to make it happen any way I can, and we're going to do it together, all right? And it's such a shame because the only time I see predominantly white groups is the Black Lives Matter rallies, the Antifa protests, these feminazis or whatever you want to call them. It's ridiculous. You know, this is a very diverse group. But then again, if there was only white people here, there's still diversity in the bunch. You just have to look for it, okay? It goes beyond color. So, I'll say this before I go. America is not colorblind, but we are blind by color. And that's the problem. It's not about black or white anymore. This is 50 states of gray. And we have to open our eyes to it, okay? Thank you all for listening. My name is Joe Vival. I'm a hardcore patriot from New York City. I want to make America great again. Stay patriotic, stay deplorable, stay American. And if you're not American, don't you want to be? Isn't that a beautiful question? building the wall, but the wall has a door. You have to knock on it. America first, not America only, God before that, okay? He's your president, he's my president, he's our president, Donald J. Trump. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care, God bless it. Always and forever, protect free speech. God bless.
All right, all the press that's in here right now, it has to be rotated outside, so the press has to come inside. So everybody who's in here right now, except for these two right here, can stay. Everybody else has to go. Everybody else. Everybody else. All the rest of the press. Okay, you're straight. You're straight. I've been with you guys. Yeah. No, you're straight. Please rotate out safely, politely, respectfully, so all the other press pool can come in. We're still waiting for them over here. Get Lieutenant and the Captain. Captain. Sir? Officer. Are we still waiting for them over here or what?
No, so the press has already done their rotation. Yeah. There's no more press coming in.
Oh, okay. I was told that there was more coming in.
I don't think so. I think everyone sort of come through at this time.
Sarge, are you good?
We're going to need to cover up the speakers. All right. It's about to, I think it's about to rain. We're going to need to take a break.
Yeah, like the storm is really so we're concerned more about the safety. We have like this is the second or I mean that's I would strongly recommend it like you coming down because everyone's safety in this area is their responsibility. As public safety. The storm is very much obvious. So I would say, you want me to shut it down? Let's go ahead and
All right, everybody. Since the storm is coming in, nature won't allow us to continue going. We're going to have to start breaking everything down for everybody's safety, okay? Please work with the cops and listen. Everything right here is wrapping up, okay? If you want to do interviews, you better snatch Jason while you can. But everybody's wrapping up. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you all for being peaceful. Show love. Smiles, laughter, good times, and good vibes.
Can we just do like a press conference with Jason? Can you like come to the mic?
I wanted you to speak though.
Hey, where's it? Jason! Alright, so how many people is it?
No one being Jason. Are you disappointed? Get out of my face, dude. Just a question. Are you disappointed
I'm not
about
disappointed because we did a peaceful rally and we upheld free speech. And after the violence that occurred last year, people were rightly scared of coming out. They were scared that they were going to get attacked by mobs of people. They were scared that they were going to get arrested when they fought back. And so we had to prove the point that we could do this rally and people could be safe. People on my side and people on the other side. So I don't care about the turnout, whether you have 15 people or 15 million in America. We respect the free speech rights, even of political dissidents, and I think the DC Police Department and the federal law enforcement did that. They protected my safety and my speech. They protected the rights of the counter-protesters' safety and speech, and so that's something that I'm proud of, and I think that the city of...
What happened to the bus?
Something that I think
is the alt-right broken?
What happened to the bus today?
I'm not in the alt-right. I'm trying to do white rights. I think the alt-right is broken. I think that they're over the top and they are legitimately hateful. I don't think that the alt-right was the way it became when I first got into it. It was a much more moderate thing.
But what about
and it was
the
more
people
about
over
humor,
there?
but I think that they've lost their
They're
way.
calling you white supremacists over there.
No, I'm not a white supremacist.
What's
We
the
were
point?
we were marching with white people. We were marching today with black people. We were marching with Hispanic people. And I watched as white liberals were coming up to my Hispanic and black supporters and giving them the finger and saying, "You sold out. You betrayed us. You betrayed your people." And why do these white liberals think that they own people because of their skin color?
Why do they
I think
call
there's
you a white
definitely
supremacist?
because there's been a lot of lies. I think that there's a whole racial grievance industry out there with the SPLC and the ADL that have been trying to make the citizens of DC scared. I've been listening to the news coverage, and it was like a terror attack was happening, and it's just speech. Speech does not hurt
Because of
people.
what happened last year, that's why.
What happened last year is because the Charlottesville government allowed it to happen. There was an independent review. Former federal prosecutor Tim Heaphy said that it was the city's fault when the first outbreaks of violence happened. Instead of ending the violence, he said, let them fight. It will make it easier to declare an unlawful assembly. And people don't know that we had a permit, just like the president said. People don't know that 5 days before the event, I talked to the city manager of Charlottesville, Maurice Jones, and he's admitted this under oath, that I said I was afraid that the police were going to stand down like they'd done in Berkeley, California, and they didn't give a damn about that. They stood down just to spite me. They threw their own people, even the Antifa and Black Lives Matter, into a gristle mill of violence so that they could shut down speech they didn't like. They promised me 8 squadrons of police officers. They promised me they were going to create separation between the protesters. But there were people on both sides who came armed to the teeth. And this has got to stop. Like, let alone the civil rights abuse that happened with the Charlottesville government. We've got to stop attacking each other and shouting over one another about things we disagree about. I've been constantly on the radio trying to tell people I'm willing to talk about white civil rights with people who want to talk to me about black civil rights or Black Lives Matter or whatever. I think we've got to start having these conversations. The bad elements of the alt-right, the elements of the alt-right that legitimately are neo-Nazis, are being made more extreme when more moderate voices with legitimate grievances of white Americans are not allowed to be expressed without being called white supremacists and having people be attacked.
Do you condemn the white supremacists?
Why don't we just fight for amendment and rights, human rights? Why are we dividing this into races?
People only use that criticism against white people. I've had that criticism many times, but I'll be patient and explain that there are already advocates out there for black people. They have the NAACP, they have Black Lives Matter. They have many white people who are standing up for them. Jewish people have AIPAC, they have ADL, but there are no advocates for white people. No, I'm not condemning the KKK. I'm not condoning the KKK. In their time, the KKK were mass vigilantes who used racially motivated violence to oppress the free speech of people they didn't like. And today, Antifa are doing the same thing against white people.
What's the next step? What's the next event?
Antifa are the only mass vigilantes attacking people because of their race at this rally.
Have you seen any Antifa burning crosses?
What's that?
Have you seen any Antifa burning crosses like the KKK used to do?
No, they hate white people. They're different.
But it's not the same in that case.
Whether you hate white people or whether you hate somebody else, hate is hate. And the fact that we can't acknowledge that anti-white racism is just as bad against racism of other groups is part of what's holding us back.
Jason, what's the next step?
We've got to respect one another.
What's the next step?
I'm not sure. I'm going to have to decompress. I think this was a big step, you know, because it was peaceful, man. And that's the main thing. And people got to speak. It wasn't perfect. I think a lot of my people got left behind at the train station. We thought we were going to be able to bring our flags, and then they changed the rules about polls at the last minute. But I'm not going to complain about minor things. We've got a lot of big issues to tackle in this.
What happened with the bus?
What is
What happened with the bus?
Wait, what
was out here yesterday.
I don't know what their message. I don't know what their message is, because I think that they're very confused, because I've been listening to the same news reports that they have, and they thought a terror attack was going to happen. They thought people were coming out here to hurt people, but I've been clearly trying to say that this rally is not about hurting people who are black or brown or Jewish. this rally is about standing up for the rights of white people, and I think that we need to move to a place as white people become a minority in the United States and Europe by 2050, that white people are allowed to unequivocally stand up for their rights without crossing the line into hatred, and have a conversation with people who are civil rights advocates for other racial groups, and perhaps we can come to more understanding. And a lot of people are having trouble getting on board with that, but I'm telling you, when you try to censor people like me who are trying to unify and trying to be more moderate and trying to extend a hand in friendship, you're only going to frustrate people. The white identity movement is not going to go away. People are just going to become. I disavowed neo-Nazis.
Can you name one right that white people have lost?
I did not want them at this rally, and we did not have any neo-Nazis.
How are white people's civil rights
2 minutes, we gotta go.
Who changed the civil rights being threatened?
I don't know.
Yesterday I was here interviewing before all of this crowd. Hardly few people were here. And I asked people specifically, what do they know about you? 99% of the people I asked said, I have no idea. I asked, why are they here protesting? They said, I'm here protesting because white people hate black people and other nationalities. I've been to your website. You put all of this stuff on here. What I'm disgusted by. People have the right to express their opinions today. That crowd over there has a right to express their opinions today. I, as a white person, have a right to express my opinion today and not be called a racist. I, as a white person, experience racism too, and it's not fair. So just because we're asking for a voice does not mean we're a racist, we're homophobic.
This man is able to express himself today, and by expressing himself and having people listen to him and not call him a racist or a Nazi, that prevents him from becoming an actual Nazi. And I want people to understand we've got to start listening to each other. This guy is absolutely right.
Do you want an all-white
Just
America?
like President Trump.
No,
Just like President Trump. I'm not a white nationalist. I'm a civil rights advocate. I support civil rights.
Why do you think so few
So we
people
got to
came
go.
today?
Time is running out.
Exactly. I don't have time for
God bless America.
Whatever she wants. It's not your business.
Okay, folks, media, go back to the press area. Head back to your area. Head back to your area.
Fuck you too. Your horses are in distress. Keep sitting on them. Keep hurting them.
So there's the scene this afternoon, live from Lafayette Park, right across from the White House here in Washington, D.C. A line of pretty severe thunderstorms making their way towards the district, and the police asking our C-SPAN crew to move along. Next, New York Times White House correspondent Maggie